If you take a crumpled piece of aluminum foil and place it inside a standard kitchen microwave, the results are immediate and violent. The invisible electromagnetic waves bouncing around the chamber instantly arc into visible, destructive plasma, violently sparking, popping, and melting the metal in a matter of seconds. Now, I want you to scale that exact same physics experiment up to the size of an entire planet. The results aren't just sparking metal, they are completely apocalyptic. For decades, mainstream academics have sat in comfortable chairs and told us that ancient stories of the sky falling, the heavens burning, and the sun splitting open were just primitive fairy tales born from an irrational fear of thunderstorms. But they aren't. When you cross-reference global mythology with modern high-level plasma physics, a terrifying, highly clinical picture emerges. Our sun is that microwave, our planet's magnetic field is the foil, and the universe keeps turning the dial up to 10. The sky didn't just fall in a poetic metaphor, it physically and electrically collapsed. Stick around for number 1, because the exact astrophysical mechanism that melted the ancient world is on a measurable, ticking countdown, and it perfectly explains the flash-frozen mammoths and glass fortresses we've investigated before. Let's get to it. Number 12. The Squatterman petroglyphs, global. Imagine being a lone explorer deep inside the dark, humid expanse of a remote Venezuelan cave. Your flickering torch illuminates a bizarre, deeply etched stick figure on the cavern wall. It's a man with a distinct, perfectly symmetrical dot hovering on each side of his torso. Weirdly, an archaeologist thousands of miles away in the mountains of Armenia finds the exact same carving. Then another is discovered in Spain, then another in the scorched deserts of Arizona. Separated by vast oceans and thousands of years, completely disconnected ancient artists obsessively carved this identical, highly unnatural shape into solid rock. Anthropologists lazily assumed this Squatterman was just a universal human archetype, perhaps a dancing shaman or a primitive hunting ritual. But Dr. Anthony Peratt, a leading plasma physicist at Los Alamos National Laboratory, recognized it immediately, not from art history textbooks, but from the diagnostic readouts of his high-energy particle accelerators. Cross-referencing tens of thousands of these global petroglyphs with high-fidelity laboratory simulations of massive electrical discharges, Peratt proved definitively that this isn't a man at all. It is a high-energy plasma Z-pinch discharge. When a massive influx of cosmic radiation overloads Earth's magnetic field, it creates a luminous, highly structured, 56-filament plasma column stretching high into space. The ancients weren't drawing the products of their imagination. They were frantically recording a terrifying, lethal cosmic electrical event that was clearly visible to the naked eye. Mainstream academics stubbornly insist it's just a coincidence, a mere byproduct of the human brain's hard wiring for basic geometric symmetry. But the specific dielectric exactness of the Z-pinch instability is far too mathematically precise to be a global accident. The sky was literally glowing with deadly, writhing radiation, and this wasn't the only twisted shape they saw burning in the heavens above an isolated island in the Pacific. Number 11. The Easter Island Rongo Rongo script. Deep in the extreme remote isolation of Easter Island, indigenous elders carefully guarded sacred wooden tablets covered in an undeciphered, hypnotic script known as Rongo Rongo. When European missionaries first arrived on the island shores in the 19th century, they systematically burned almost all of them, dismissing the jagged, dancing humanoid figures as pagan gibberish. Today, only 24 of these irreplaceable, mysterious artifacts survive, their true meaning seemingly lost to the ghosts of the Pacific. For well over a century, the world's top linguists have desperately tried to translate Rongo Rongo as a standard phonetic language, failing completely. That's because they were consulting the wrong scientific discipline. Dr. Robert Schoch and a team of alternative researchers noticed that these glyphs perfectly match the complex morphing plasma formations observed in high-voltage laboratory discharges, specifically the Peratt instabilities. The islanders weren't writing a terrestrial alphabet to record trade or poetry. They were documenting a celestial breakdown. During a severe geomagnetic excursion, the Earth's protective atmospheric layers would literally unravel, filling the sky with writhing, luminescent plasma ropes. This perfectly explains why the natives of Easter Island built the massive Ana-te-Pahu underground cave systems. They were hiding from a localized atmospheric collapse, emerging only to carve the terrifying, twisted shapes they saw raining down from the stratosphere. Skeptics argue that Rongo Rongo is simply a highly stylized memory aid used by priests for chanting local creation myths. Yet the exact, flawless duplication of specific plasma instabilities forces a chilling realization. The sky was literally tearing itself apart, and halfway across the world, another ancient, highly advanced empire recorded the exact moment the heat from that tearing sky became unbearable. Number 10. The Chinese 10 Suns Record. Imagine waking up, pouring a cup of tea, and stepping outside to check your crops, only to find the morning sky completely, terrifyingly unrecognizable. According to the meticulously kept ancient Chinese text, the Huananzi, during the reign of Emperor Yao, the eastern horizon didn't just brighten with the dawn, it caught fire. Terrified citizens dropped to their knees as they looked up to see not one, but 10 suns appearing simultaneously in the heavens, instantly boiling the mighty rivers and scorching the earth to ash. Modern historians casually dismiss this entire historical record as a charming, dramatic exaggeration of a severe summer drought. However, viewed through the cold, calculating lens of modern plasma astrophysics, this is a precise, terrifying account of an optical atmospheric effect. If our sun were to undergo a minor recurring explosion, a solar shell ejection, or a micronova, it would violently blast a massive wave of plasma, isotopes, and cosmic dust directly toward Earth. As this hyperloaded dust shell hits our upper atmosphere, the sheer volume of particulate matter causes severe light refraction, atmospheric compression, and thermal ionization. The single expanding solar blast visually splinters through the saturated atmosphere, creating the terrifying, blinding illusion of multiple intense light sources burning through the haze. This wasn't a fairy tale, it was a traumatized observation of a localized extinction event. We desperately want to believe the 10 Suns was just a colorful, poetic metaphor for political instability and warring factions, because the alternative is deeply unsettling. It means the celestial mechanics we rely on are capable of blinding spontaneous violence. And this phenomenon wasn't isolated to Eastern texts, because a completely different civilization explicitly documented the sun's divine chariot losing control.
Number 9. The Phaethon Scorch. Greek record. In the classical Greek world, parents would sit by the hearth and tell their children the tragic, cautionary story of Phaethon. The arrogant mortal begged his father, the sun god Helios, to let him drive the blazing solar chariot across the sky for just one single day. He takes the reins, loses control of the divine fiery horses, and plunges wildly toward the earth. The text explicitly states he sets the highest mountains on fire, boils the oceans dry, and permanently turns the lush, green continent of Africa into a scorched, lifeless desert. We are taught in grade school to treat Phaethon as a fable about youthful hubris and the dangers of pride. But the brilliant philosopher Plato explicitly warned us not to. In his famous dialogue Timaeus, Plato relays the translated words of a high-ranking Egyptian priest who states that this Greek myth actually preserves a literal, terrifying truth, a declination of the bodies moving in the heavens. When a solar micronova occurs, it fundamentally alters the electromagnetic environment of the entire solar system. Earth's magnetosphere becomes supercharged with deadly synchrotron radiation. The burning of the Earth and the sudden, rapid desertification of the Sahara, which geological core samples prove historically happened with terrifying speed, aligned perfectly with a sudden, catastrophic blast of thermal radiation from a destabilized star. Classical scholars assure us with a smile that Phaethon is merely a psychological projection invented by primitive minds to explain the natural existence of deserts. But when one of history's greatest logical minds insists it is an astronomical record of planetary devastation, we should probably listen. Because the very people who told Plato this secret had their own terrifying name for this solar death ray. Number 8. The Egyptian Sekhmet, the Eye of Ra. Along the lush, life-giving banks of the Nile, the ancient Egyptians worshipped Ra as the benevolent, life-sustaining bringer of light. But the hieroglyphic texts from the Book of the Heavenly Cow reveal a much darker, apocalyptic chapter. Ra grew utterly furious with humanity's hubris and rebellion. To wipe the slate clean, he didn't send a flood of water. He tore out his own eye, personified as the lioness goddess Sekhmet, and hurled her at the earth, unleashing a blinding heat that covered the entire world in a suffocating, thick, blood-red glow. Egyptologists labeled this as standard primitive theology used to explain away the fear of solar eclipses or brutal summer heat waves. But the plasma physics point exactly elsewhere. When a massive, sudden influx of solar plasma impacts a rapidly weakening magnetosphere, it triggers a severe geomagnetic collapse. The immense atmospheric ionization causes oxygen atoms in the upper atmosphere to emit a brilliant, terrifying red light. In modern plasma physics, this is known scientifically as a high-altitude red dawn or a red aurora. The Egyptians weren't writing religious fiction. They were meticulously describing the literal visual hue of a suffocating, superheated atmosphere right before the physical thermal shock wave of a solar blast made impact with the surface. Sekhmet, the Eye of Ra, was the anthropomorphized terror of the sun's lethal plasma envelope. The comforting narrative sold in museums is that Sekhmet is just a mythological personification of the harsh, unforgiving desert sun. But the highly specific global mention of a crimson sky preceding catastrophic heat is a recognized forensic signature of atmospheric ionization. And as it turns out, the shape of the sun during this red terror wasn't a perfect circle at all.
Number 7. The Petaled Sun Carvings. Deep within the suffocating jungles of South America and stretching all the way up to the arid deserts of the American Southwest, explorers keep stumbling upon a recurring, deeply perplexing image. Ancient stone carvers dedicated thousands of hours of backbreaking labor to depicting the sun. But they didn't draw a familiar perfect sphere with a smiley face. Instead, they consistently, obsessively carved the sun as a bizarre, mechanical-looking flower, exploding outward with exactly 4 or 8 distinct, rigid geometric petals. Mainstream archaeologists stand in front of these ruins and tell us this is just a stylistic, cultural choice. They claim ancient people were simply taking artistic liberties, adding rigid rays of light to make the sun look pretty. But high-level plasma physicists look at these petaled suns and see a terrifying, exact, diagnostic readout. When a star undergoes a micronova, it doesn't always explode outward in a perfect, uniform sphere. Due to the intense twisting of its internal magnetic fields, the star ejects plasma along specific geometric fault lines, creating intense, focused jets of lethal radiation. In supercomputer plasma physics simulations, this exact Z-pinch geometry manifests visually as a 4 or 8-pointed starburst. The ancients weren't doodling. They were documenting the precise, hyperdimensional geometry of a stellar eruption. Mainstream historians say this is just primitive art and cultural cross-pollination, but alternative researchers and plasma physicists say it's an exact, scientific observation of a localized solar explosion. Which side are you on? Science or mystery? Tell me below in the comments, because I love seeing you guys debate this. And you'll need to pick a side, because the civilization just north of those petaled suns remembered exactly what rained down immediately after the blinding flash. Number 6. The Huracan, Mayan record. If you live anywhere on the coast, you know the absolute life-threatening terror of a Category 5 hurricane. But the word itself originates directly from the ancient Mayan god Huracan, a fearsome reptilian deity of wind, storm, and unyielding fire.
According to the Popol Vuh, the sacred foundation text of the Maya, Huracan was displeased with the first, flawed generation of humans. To wipe the slate clean, he didn't just summon a rainstorm, he unleashed a devastating fire and water directly from the torn sky, which was immediately followed by a suffocating, terrifying black rain. Modern interpretations brush this off as a dramatic mythological retelling of a bad tropical storm hitting the Yucatan, but a hurricane doesn't drop fire from the sky, and it certainly doesn't drop thick black rain. This is a flawless forensic description of cosmic fallout. When a star undergoes a micronova, the initial plasma impact burns the upper atmosphere, the fire. The massive thermal vaporization of the world's oceans creates an unprecedented global deluge, the water. And finally, the immense volume of soot, vaporized rock, and cosmic dust caught in the stratosphere coalesces, blocking out the sun and falls back to Earth as thick, toxic black precipitation. It's extremely easy to label the Popol Vuh as mythological poetry designed to help ancient, uneducated farmers cope with extreme weather. But the specific sequence of a thermal flash, followed by mega tsunamis, followed by atmospheric particulate fallout, is a perfect one-to-one match for modern nuclear winter and extinction modeling. And we don't just have to rely on their old texts, because we actually have the physically melted rocks to prove it.
Number 5. The Vitrified evidence. Scotland, Peru. Picture a massive, ancient stone fortress sitting high on the rugged, freezing Scottish highlands, built with granite boulders the size of pickup trucks. Now imagine that the entire upper half of this impenetrable, multi-ton stone wall looks exactly like a melted wax candle. From the rolling hills of Scotland to the breathtaking high-altitude ruins of Peru, we find colossal stone structures that have been entirely vitrified, which means the solid rock was literally turned into liquid glass. If you watched our previous videos, you know the mainstream explanation for this is almost insulting to our intelligence. Academics claim ancient people built massive sustained timber fires against their own stone walls in an attempt to strengthen them. But you absolutely cannot melt solid granite into glass with a wood fire. It requires sustained, concentrated temperatures exceeding 1200 degrees Celsius. The only natural phenomenon on Earth capable of this flash melting is if the sky physically touched the ground. During a severe solar event and the subsequent total collapse of the magnetosphere, colossal plasma tongues, arcs of cosmic lightning conducting millions of volts, would ground themselves directly into the Earth's surface. These cosmic lightning bolts instantly vaporized organic matter and flash-melted solid bedrock into glass. Skeptics desperately cling to the campfire theory because admitting that cosmic lightning melted our ancestors' fortresses upends our entire fragile illusion of terrestrial safety. But the physical thermal shock and magnetic anomalies locked inside that glass tell a story of an electrical hellscape. And this wasn't a random one-time freak event. It's a measurable, repeating cycle that was accurately predicted by the indigenous elders of the desert. Number 4. The Hopi Blue Star Prophecy. High on the arid, windswept mesas of Arizona, the Hopi tribe has carefully and secretly guarded a chilling vision of the end of the world, passed down strictly through oral tradition. It is known as the Blue Star Kachina Prophecy. The elders speak of a terrifying future time when the twins who reside at the North and South Poles will suddenly abandon their stations. When they leave, the earth will stagger like a drunkard, the oceans will rise up and swallow the land, and a blue star will dance in the heavens as the sky physically falls. Ethnographers and sociologists often dismiss this as a quaint spiritual allegory about humanity losing its moral balance with nature. But strip away the indigenous mysticism, and you are left staring at a terrifyingly accurate modern description of a geomagnetic excursion. The twins at the poles are the Earth's magnetic north and south. We know as a hard geological fact that roughly every 12,000 years, Earth's magnetic poles violently drift, weaken, and eventually flip. When this magnetic shield drops, the planet physically wobbles, causing massive tectonic and oceanic displacement.
The dancing blue star is the deadly influx of unshielded cosmic radiation ionizing in the upper atmosphere. The Hopi aren't speaking in cute riddles, they're passing down an astronomical survival manual detailing the exact geophysical mechanics of a pole shift. Mainstream anthropologists insist this is just indigenous folklore, loosely based on tracking seasonal star movements, but alternative researchers argue it's a traumatic, inherited genetic memory of the last geomagnetic excursion 12,000 years ago, or a strict, urgent warning for the next one. Which side are you on? Science or mystery? Let's fight it out in the comments, because halfway across the world, another ancient culture explicitly described this exact same magnetic failure as a high-tech war in heaven.
Number 3. The Babylonian Enuma Elish. Deep within the dusty, buried ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, archaeologists unearthed the Enuma Elish, a sprawling series of clay tablets detailing the Babylonian epic of creation. It tells the story of a cataclysmic, universe-shaking cosmic battle between the supreme god Marduk and the multi-headed chaos monster Tiamat. To defeat her, Marduk doesn't use a standard bronze sword or spear. He traps her in an invisible, glowing net, violently splitting the sky in half and reshaping the entire world from the burning, falling wreckage. Historians view this purely as state-sponsored religious propaganda, a story invented by kings to justify the political rise of Babylon. But if we read this exact same text through the lens of modern plasma physics, a startling, undeniable technical manual emerges. The net is a perfect ancient description of the Earth's magnetosphere, the invisible grid-like electromagnetic shield that actively protects us from lethal solar radiation. When the texts describe the sky being split and the net being weaponized and failing, it perfectly parallels the violent magnetic reconnection events that occur when our magnetosphere buckles under extreme solar wind pressure. The sky would literally tear open and roll back like a burning scroll, bombarding the surface with deadly radiation. The Enuma Elish is not a fairy tale about imaginary sea monsters. It is the traumatized, poeticized memory of our planetary shield collapsing. The comfortable, tenured academic consensus is that Marduk's net is just a poetic metaphor for the triumph of societal order over natural chaos, but the highly specific imagery of a glowing, tearing grid in the sky aligns perfectly with the visual failure of an electromagnetic field. And we know this celestial violence wasn't just contained to Earth's atmosphere, because we found the physical, glassy proof of it sitting quietly in the vacuum of space. Number 2. The Apollo 11 lunar glass. On July 20th, 1969, NASA astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin stepped out of the Apollo 11 lunar module and cemented their names into human history. As they explored the desolate, gray, completely silent surface of the Sea of Tranquility, they noticed something completely unexpected shimmering in the harsh, unfiltered sunlight. Scattered everywhere across the lunar dust were millions of tiny, iridescent glass beads, glittering like shattered diamonds across the floor of a dead world. NASA initially assumed these microscopic glass spheres were simply created by the kinetic friction and heat of ancient random meteor impacts, but subsequent highly detailed chemical analysis revealed a far more terrifying origin. These beads contained specific, undeniable isotopes and thermal signatures, proving they were created by a massive, instantaneous flash of extreme heat that completely glazed the surface of the moon. Furthermore, advanced dating techniques suggest this flash occurred within the last 30,000 years, an absolute blink of an eye in cosmic time. The moon has no atmosphere to compress and burn. It was directly baked by a sudden, catastrophic emission of thermal radiation straight from the sun. And here is the deeply unsettling truth you cannot ignore. The Earth and the moon share the exact same orbit. If a solar flash was powerful enough to melt the surface of the moon into glass beads, that exact same wave of fire slammed violently into Earth's atmosphere. Astronomers desperately want to attribute this to a localized swarm of micrometeorites because the alternative shatters our comforting paradigm of safety. But the lunar glass is a forensic fingerprint of a recent catastrophic solar eruption. It is the smoking gun proving the sky didn't just fall in ancient myths, it physically burned us. Which brings us to the terrifying cyclical engine driving this entire phenomenon.
We look up at our sun every single day and see a faithful, constant companion. It is the ultimate symbol of natural stability. But how can one single cosmic event be responsible for both the melted liquid glass fortresses of Scotland and the flash-frozen mammoths of Siberia? Fire and ice are opposite extremes. For decades, this paradox baffled geologists, but the answer lies in a violent, cyclical secret that ties every single ancient myth and physical anomaly we've discussed into one terrifying mechanism. The grand reveal is the solar micronova event. Our sun is not a perfectly stable nuclear furnace. Mainstream scientists are being forced back to the drawing board because astrophysics is increasingly pointing to the reality that stars exactly like ours naturally accumulate a thick, heavy shell of cosmic dust, meteoric debris, and gas as they cross the galactic equator. This dense shell acts as a cosmic pressure cooker, trapping the sun's immense internal energy until it violently blasts it off in a single 360-degree wave of plasma. And here is the exact terrifying mechanical breakdown of what happens when that wave hits Earth. When this expanding, hypervelocity plasma shell impacts us, the side of the Earth facing the sun is hit with a blinding thermal flash of thousands of degrees. This is the heat that vaporized the oceans, caused the Chinese 10 suns, and flash melted the Scottish stone ruins into glass. But as this massive, dense wave of cosmic material passes by our planet, its immense gravitational and magnetic wake violently drags our atmosphere along with it. On the dark side of the Earth, the protective atmospheric blanket is literally ripped open, sucking the absolute zero vacuum of outer space directly down to the surface. That atmospheric rip is the only physical thermodynamic mechanism capable of plunging the temperature to minus 150 degrees in seconds, flash freezing a 6-ton Siberian mammoth with unchewed summer food still in its mouth. Fire on the day side, absolute cosmic zero on the night side. The only thing that protects us from solar radiation is Earth's magnetic shield. Today, astrophysicists are tracking a terrifying reality. The Earth's magnetic North Pole is currently sprinting across the Arctic at an unprecedented 30 miles per year, and our global magnetic shield has lost nearly 10% of its strength in just the last century. The decay is actively accelerating. The shield isn't just fluctuating, it is dropping perfectly on schedule for the 12,000-year cycle. The sky has fallen before the ancient survivors warned us, and the geological timer is ticking right now. But if you think we have to wait for the magnetic field to hit absolute zero to see this plasma physics in action, you are dead wrong. If you've made it down this rabbit hole with me to the very end, you are no longer just a passive spectator. You are initiated. You now see the hidden, terrifying mechanics of our history and our future that 99% of people blindly walk right past every single day. The algorithm hates content like this because it forces you to stop scrolling and actually think. Don't let a line of code decide if you get to hear the truth again. Hit subscribe, turn on your notifications, and join the smartest, most awake community on YouTube. We don't just accept the spoon-fed textbook narrative here. We demand the forensic evidence. Stay curious, stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next one.